Welcome to Hangout from Times Ascent. My name is Sujit John, and I have been a journalist with the Times of India for 25 years. I will moderate this discussion today. We will be discussing the very hot topic of health and wellness of working professionals. Since the COVID-19 pandemic started, these are issues uppermost in many companies' minds. There are big concerns around both physical and mental wellness. To discuss the emerging issues, to discuss how companies and employees must reorient themselves, we have with us today three very accomplished professionals. We have with us Dr. Marcus Ramy. Marcus has been on our panel before. He currently serves as General Manager of Thrive Global in India, a US-based behavior change technology and media company founded by Arianna Huffington in 2016. Marcus completed his Bachelor's of Science and Medical degrees from University College Medical School in London. His passion for extreme physiology has allowed him to conduct field research across the planet. He has done expeditions to the sides of Everest, skiing in the Arctic and the European Alps. He has served as a medical officer in the Royal Air Force and at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. Marcus is also a keen athlete and long-distance marathon runner. He holds a Guinness World Record for backwards running. Wow, Marcus. Welcome, Marcus. We have with us Mallika Rao. Mallika is a wellness coach, mindfulness trainer, humanitarian, and a spiritual activist. Mallika brings over 15 years of learning and research in various psychological and spiritual modalities from some of the best teachers in the world. With over 7 years of corporate experience and having traveled extensively, Mallika comes with deep perspectives and learnings from various cultures and spiritual communities. Mallika is a Vipassana and Tai Chi practitioner. Mallika believes true well-being is experienced when your mind, body, and soul are in harmony. With that understanding, Mallika works with individuals and corporates to help them practice mindfulness, meditation, and minimalism. Welcome, Mallika. She'll be speaking a lot more on that in the discussion. And we have with us Purnima Garg. Purnima is Deputy Country Director at Room to Read, a leading non-profit focused on girls' education and children's literacy in Asia and Africa. Purnima is a certified life coach. She's a management practitioner with more than 18 years of work experience that spans across various aspects of human resources, communication, donor engagement, and administration. Purnima's work primarily has been in the areas of organization development, designing HR systems and processes, strategic planning, non-profit budgeting, building effective and high-performing teams. She has worked in learning and development programs, performance management in a multicultural environment, compliance and competency mapping, diversity and inclusion. Welcome, Purnima.
Thank you.
Those who are viewing this, you can send in questions in the questions section of this webinar application. My first question to all of you, at the workplace, in health and wellness, what has changed since the pandemic? Have there been significant changes in awareness and approach? Marcus, you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, and thanks for having me again. It's wonderful to be here. So thanks for orchestrating this this gathering. I think fundamentally the entire landscape has changed. I've been a champion of well-being for almost 2 decades and working with companies around the world around these themes for that long. And it's really in the last 8 or 9 months that this conversation around well-being has now skyrocketed up the prioritization schedule and list for organizations. And now people understand that there is a competitive advantage which comes with well-being. And this concept of resilience, which I think we'll talk about later on, is not just the resiliency of the system or the process, but we now need to focus on the resiliency of us at the individual level as well. So I'm happy to see that. It's unfortunate that the methodology that this has had to come to life has been through a major event like this, but I'm a big believer that any challenge provides an opportunity, and this is now the opportunity for all of us, is to reinforce those new processes, equip our people with the new skills, the business skills of the future, of which those core competencies will be as much based on one's individual well-being as it is on some of the other traditional forms of business growth and metrics.
Mallika, do you want to add to that? What have you seen companies doing? Things changed?
Well, I cannot contest that. It certainly did. Um, Along with a lot of stress and anxiety and about so much of uncertainty around this entire pandemic, people have gone through a lot of stress. There's no denying it. But the flip side of it is that this forced isolation has emptied the road. So I do hear initially, the first few months of the pandemic, I did hear people looking at the brighter side where things have slowed down a lot and they could smell the roses, see the skies more bluer, and so on and so forth. We could hear the birds chirping. But eventually, it did come to a point where people were starting to get frustrated with this whole work from home scenario where the personal and professional lines were blurred. So they did not know where their personal life paused and then their professional life has taken over. So there was a lot of work pressures and with this isolation and also this distant working environment, it was difficult mentally and emotionally for a lot of people. And I see the good part of it is that organizations have started looking at mental and emotional wellness more closely and giving it more importance. So I think there's been both sides, and overall, I think our consciousness has, in a way, has leveled up. So that's the good part of this whole process.
Mental wellness and emotional wellness. How do you distinguish the two?
Right. When we say mental wellness, we are basically, I'll simplify it. Bottom line is, when we talk about mental wellness, it is about your thought process, how your mind works. Whereas the emotional part of it is the feelings and the emotions we experience. So for any event that happens, there are three things that happen, three E's, basically the event itself that has happened, and then the emotion that you feel in your body, the sensations. And the third one is the explanation you give, which is your mind, right? The meaning you attach to the entire event. And that's when the emotional charge is carried on. That's why you see something must have happened some time back and people are still living with that kind of baggage. It could have happened a week back or a month back or years back. Something happens and it triggers that charge, the emotional charge. It triggers the same memory, and then you see the whole pain rushing back to you. So that's when we say it has to be mental and emotional wellness. You need to understand they're two different aspects, closely related. They are not in isolation, but they are different processes.
Okay. Purnima, you are opening remark, and you work with companies. What have you seen? What have you seen change?
So I would completely agree with what Dr. Marcus said and what Mallika said. There has never been, wellness as a whole, and I'll not specifically talk about health, emotional, or mental wellness. Wellness in general never was so urgent to be addressed. And yes, it is so unfortunate that it had to reach to a pandemic situation for the organizations, for the working professionals to realize that how important this aspect was. I mean, probably unconsciously, many organizations were working on it by calling it employee morale, I would say. Still, they kind of do that, but it was a very unconscious effort, but it was a very minimal thing to say. They were not really reaching out to the deeper causes or the larger well-being of individuals, of teams, of organizations. So, I mean, I completely agree with both the panelists, and this is an urgent need, so to say, not just at a country level, but at a global level, and hence we are here talking about the topic. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, urgent need. Absolutely. I've heard, especially about mental health. I mean, I've heard so many companies talk about it, especially with youngsters sitting alone and paying guest accommodations and all that. Yeah, but before getting into the mental side of it, or the emotional side of it, Marcus, I read your pieces on Generation C, the 6 stages that you saw during the pandemic and all that. Do you want to go through that?
Yeah, I mean, it's still very much a live piece of research that is going on. But essentially, the vantage point that I have, which is working with a number of organizations globally, especially when the lockdown started to happen, and of course, the 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 public response to the singular cause, which was the virus, has been very different in different countries, and for many different reasons as well. Right? You've had countries which have gone into complete lockdown, some which have been in a halfway house, and some which have had, like the Scandinavian ones, which haven't had any form of lockdown at all, really. So what I started to do was I started to look at some of the trends in the data that was coming across, and I noticed that there was actually a pattern which was beginning to emerge. And it was basically, I formulated this, and I can share it with our viewers at the end. It's the 6 stages of the framework of action, of the journey of the individual and the teams. The first 3 phases were really about adoption and engagement, and then the consumption of these digital platforms. And we saw a lot of rush in the beginning for people to jump on to these technology platforms. Some companies were prepared, other companies were not. But what we saw, and I think Monica alluded to that fact, was there was a honeymoon phase. And I was doing a weekly poll in India from when the Prime Minister announced the Janta curfew. And I had around, I think now 40 or 50,000 people who participated in this poll, looking at stress levels sequentially, first every week, and then we slowly extended that out. And what we noticed was that the baseline stress level, when it immediately occurred, actually started to drop in the first few weeks, up to about 6 weeks on from the beginning. And that's the sort of honeymoon. Everything was new. We was not commuting as much. We were at home. Work wasn't as intense at that time because companies were still trying to figure out, what do I do with my people? What is the job? And all of those type of things started to happen. Then the realization occurred that this was not going to be a short-term journey. And lockdown 1 became lockdown 2, became lockdown 3. We saw the economic crash. We saw stimulus measures being laid out around the world. Of course, in India, we didn't have the budgetary capacity to do so. So we had the migrant worker crisis and all of those issues around the things. And that's when stress levels started to rise. And actually, they rose pretty sharply. We started at a level of about 5. It had dropped to 4.1. And then it reached a high of 6.7, 6.8 when I was doing this. And most concerning for me was the people who were polling in the extreme category, that's a score of 8 and above, had increased from 21% to 37% of individuals. That's a very, very large number when you extrapolate it out across corporate India. That was stage 4, which again, Malika described, which was the sort of isolation, the loneliness phase. And people were hit by the realization, this is going to go on for a long time. I'm on my own, etc. Stage 5 and stage 6. So I think for some people, they have started to enter stage 5, and I've actually started to see the stress polls begin to drop now, and we're touching about the early sorts of 6.1 right now. And for these people, this is the sort of the acceptance stage for individuals. And a lot of people have begun to create routines. They've created thoughts around sustainability. We are getting used to having our children and the schooling at home. Our holidays have become much more local, and we saw Airbnb's IPO last night being a testament to that type of new way of travel, etc., DoorDash, etc. So I think this is, there are a lot of new behaviors which are now beginning to play out in society because of that. And the last stage, which I'm most excited about, which I hope that future focused leaders are talking about, is the transformative stage. Because honestly speaking, COVID is a symptom of a much larger problem, which is the climate crisis. And we started by talking before we got on about some of my global work. My main focus globally is around the climate crisis and the impact on our well-being. And all of this is tied down to, we need to solve for that over the next decade. Otherwise, things like this are just going to play out over and over again. So in this transformative stage, I think there's a lot of opportunity for digital transformation, for new ways of living, new ways of working, new cultures within organization, new ways of managing teams, new ways of education, new ways of going on holiday, electric vehicles, new fuels, etc., and well-being and being at the core of all of that. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to do at a global level if we allow ourselves to transform the way we structure our lives, our working lives, and our personal lives around that.
Okay, a lot of transformation. Yeah, absolutely. Mallika, what would you recommend? I mean, for people who are going through these issues, mental stress. You mentioned all of those. I mean, your recommendation. What is your suggestion to companies and professionals?
So I agree, and it's very interesting how Dr. Martis has actually put them in different stages and explained the whole process, how it has gone. So I certainly see an opportunity, and it was a forced opportunity. It's not, people have been, initially when we used to talk about meditation, people said, Mallika, I have no time for meditation. I'm too busy for it, right? And now with this entire pandemic, there was no other option. And actually, they had to get a little creative to give me reasons. The opportunity I would see is the slow living, going back to basics. Actually, a lot of people had the opportunity to smell the roses one more time after a long time, and then see the bluer skies, and agree with us that that I don't know why. I mean, whenever I speak to individuals and even at organizations, employees did mention this, that I never did notice that there's a garden, from my balcony, I could see it. And I did not notice that there's so many different kinds of birds. So after having experienced this, people are going to look and live differently. And I agree the transformation it's not about yet to come. I think it has already begun. People have changed, and they've changed for good. I mean, the world is not going to be the way we have experienced a year back or a year and a half back. It's changed completely. The interesting part is now people are taking a serious look at mental and emotional wellness to understand and to reconnect with themselves and also to their family and friends in a different way. This also means that they're going to work differently. The organizations are going to perform differently. The motivation triggers are going to be different too with these people. So what I would recommend in these times is, especially for the organizations, to, if they haven't already agreed or accepted this possibility, they should start looking at the structuring the whole work from home, or rather going back to work processes a little differently, and giving holistic wellness of paramount importance. And I think it is not going to.
How do you describe holistic wellness? How would you describe holistic wellness?
Okay, so wellness, as per me, it is physical, mental, and emotional wellness. And this pandemic has actually made all the three so important, that you have to, while people were under isolation, it is not only the stress levels, they lived a lot of sedentary life. So now they're more, and because of the COVID also, they're taking up new measures and being conscious about doing physical activities. Or I see the levels of doing pranayama, yoga, and such like fitness and wellness sessions online have risen too. People are now giving it importance and taking time to do all these things. So earlier, what I used to see, especially here in India, is that life usually is to revolve between career, family, and socializing, or finances and career, right? So now the horizons have broadened, and now people are starting to look at different areas of life and say that all these areas of life are important for me to enjoy the fulfillment. So it does matter as to who I am as a person, how do I feel as a person, what are my opinions, feelings, and how do I, where do I stand in all these three areas of wellness? And yeah, so there's a good trend, there's a good movement towards and transformation.
Okay, so both of you are saying things are improving. Okay, Purnima, employers, what can employers do for employee wellness?
So, before we jump to what the employers could do, I mean, I was really impressed by what Dr. Marcus and Malika said, that they've seen a trend which is moving towards people being really aware that wellness is so important. Somehow, I'm on the other side of the table. I would say that we still hear. I mean, the organization that I work for has an employee strength over 500 odd people. Based across all India. And I, of course, given this is a global organization, and I end up talking with my counterparts in Africa, US, and other Asian countries, it seems that it is still not a topic that's been so well taken by the employers to really realize that importance. And probably people like Marcus, the kind of work that they are doing, will put a pressure on the corporates to really take wellness as a subject, as an important strategic objective to their organizations, to really just not be the employer of the choice, but to make sure that they are more sustainable. Because especially when we talk about the service industry, who's largely dependent on people, not on machinery, because our minds are our machineries. So wellness is one subject that sooner or later they have to start adopting, I would say. So they need to align it with a larger strategic goal. So I'm yet to see that shift in the mindset changes of the corporates, especially in India. But yes, I'm happy that if Malika is sharing that at an individual level, people have started to realize that, and they are really taking that conscious effort to work on their well-being, and really having that time. Because we end up hearing all the time from our employees that they have not been able to strike that balance, and that's where they get stuck. So in fact, Sujit, I know this is your job, but if I can pose this question for Malika or Dr. Marcus, that how that balance can be, we can strike that. So if we can really talk a little bit about that before we move to what employers could do.
Okay. You want to take that, Marcus and Malika? How to strike a balance between work and life?
First thing, striking a balance, I haven't achieved it yet. So the point is, it's not getting to the perfect. It is not about getting to the perfection. It is getting started. I see that trend a lot, and that itself is a huge step. I am an advocate of mindfulness, meditation, and minimalism. And for me, it closes the loop. So when I say mindfulness, it is actually just not a practice. It is a philosophy that you bring to your life. And that's when I said it is so important to go back to your roots and go back to the basics and get your fundamentals right. And till this pandemic happened, I see a lot of people were in disconnection with ourselves. Right, we were running in the fast pace, and there were so many things to do. 40 countries to travel before you turn 40, and you need to have so much of bank balance, and then so many social media, accounts, maybe 20,000 followers in LinkedIn, and so on and so forth. It was mad rush, and suddenly when we paused, and like I said, it was a forced one. Initial 4 weeks were a vacation, but after that, people started realizing that what really matters. And there have been cases too that whenever you talk to people, they say, everything I do it for my spouse, for my children, and for my parents, and so on and so forth. And suddenly they had to live with them 24/7 in 2 months or so. Right. So those are the things that these are the things that actually matter to you the most. And now there is they're on your platter, and you have to address it. And trust me, a lot of people were not ready for it, including me. And we had to struggle at some point or the other. So that is when mindfulness actually brings you and grounds you to that, where you are, this is the moment. What happened in the past, I can't do anything about it. What comes in the future? A lot of uncertainty and a lot of negative information out there, who's scaring about the future. But this is the moment I have. How to make best use of this moment? So that's about mindfulness. And again, meditation. When I mention this, people actually assume people in orange robes with their head shivering, and then sitting in one corner, completely disconnecting from the world, which is not the case. And I've had the opportunity to bring mindfulness in a meditation in a different light to the corporates, where we talk about actually it's not zoning out from life, it is zoning into life. And then finally, the third part, minimalism, right? A lot of people actually told me that, Mallika, somehow I saved a lot of money. Looks like earlier, pre-pandemic, I used to spend at least 20% of my salary and so on and so forth on going out, restaurant, shopping, this. Suddenly I have a little more money. So that brings us back to that minimalism point, that what do I need? And demarking between want and need. And what do I need and what do I want? So that has created a lot of balance. So these 3 M's have actually worked for me and coming close to the striking balance point.
Yeah, I'm actually, I don't like the word balance. And I'll tell you why I don't like the word balance at all. To me, when I think about life, we have one universal credit, and that's time. That's the one thing that we share. The problem with time is it's finite, and we don't even know how much of it we have left, right? It's unlike any other types of credit systems. So when we design frameworks of balance, typically what we try to do is we imagine that there are the 5 or 6 silos that exist in our life, and that we need to distribute our credits across those, right? So I'll give 2 credits to my social life. I'll give 3 credits to my personal life, family life, 1 credit to work, hobbies, leisure, etc. And somehow by the distribution of those credits, we will appease everyone and somehow be happy in the process. Never happens, never can happen, never will happen. The other word that I prefer to embrace, and I'm a big believer of the narrative, the power of the narrative constructs the physical reality around you, is the concept of harmony. And I love Buddha's analogy of the instrument with the string. And ultimately, that any form of life needs to have a healthy amount of tension for it to live its fulfillment and conduct its way in a way that brings joy to other people around them. So in my life, I've created a very simple, harmonious framework, which is 3:1. So for every area that I need to invest energy out of me and put it into, for example, say one's work, I need to have 3 areas which I draw energy in from the universe. So for me, it might be my children right now because they're really young. It might be my physical activity, and it might be writing, which I enjoy greatly doing. So that's sort of the framework, 3:1. But I have the understanding that all of this is transient. Today, it might be a project. Tomorrow, it might be my physical health. Day after, it might be my parents or whatever. And the inputs may also change. So that's how I think of it, not as a balance of equilibrium, but rather as a harmony, which is based on 3 in and 1 out.
What do you think of that, Purnima? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does. Definitely. It does.
Okay. So now what do you think? Employers, what should they be doing?
So as I said that, employers' commitment to the wellness program for their employees has to be part of their overall, it has to be their strategic objective, given that most of us are in service industry, as I said earlier. And because, work is actually the leading cause of the stress. Stress is actually the trigger point of any wellness program that we design or any wellness work that we do. So from that perspective, I believe that any stressed worker will not be any good to any organization. So keeping that in mind, I mean, I would just not recommend some policies, but I would rather want to recommend some strategies that as organization they need to take up, which is more in terms of encourage the connection. And I'm talking about these strategies specifically in connection with the pandemic that we are dealing with, with the way our work life has changed, and I'm specifically talking about the work life wherein, I remember in my initial days, whenever I would have an office meeting, I will make sure my kids are tied up somewhere in one corner, or I'm tied up myself in one corner, or a room which is locked wherein no one can enter. But I don't stop them anymore. So you have to strike that balance. You have to make sure that your employees, your staff is really feeling a connection. The moment you tell them to break that connection between your personal life and your work life, it the employee has to split themselves between the two, which is killing. And hence I think one of the things as a cultural change that organization should be doing is really encouraging that connection. um, you know uh, there has to be a preparedness to really be in this setup. Now, we have seen organizations converting into a digital organizations overnight. We've all seen that. Given this pandemic, we none of us knew that we are. I mean, I remember my organization announced work from home on 14th of March, about a week before the Prime Minister announcement of Janta Curfew. None of us knew that we were asked to work from home for 9 months. We just thought we are announcing it for a week because, being a global organization, let's see what the global office says. So, with that mindset, we all came back with a diary and a pen and a laptop. None of us really knew what we are going to be getting into. So, I think that preparedness, wherein, just to leave the employees to sail through the situation is not a good idea, and people are still struggling with that. So, for example, not everyone is tech savvy, not everyone has the required gadgets at home. So these are small little things, but adds up to the stress of the work life. I also remember when during this lockdown, and I'll share my own experience wherein I was wearing these multiple hats. I was while I was still working, and at the same point in time I also was working for home. I was the maid, I was the cook, I was everything. Of course, it family took turns to do things. But at the end of the day, I wasn't getting that satisfaction the way I used to get when I used to go to work, because I had my me time also while I was driving, while I was going to office. I also had my, there was a cutoff that this is my personal time, here my office time starts. And at the end of the day, I was feeling that I am not able to do anything. So I think, that honeymoon period um, was good to see your family around, because for a very, very long time, especially working professionals have not really spent that much of time with their families. So it was a
Absolutely.
forced family time, I would say. Everyone enjoyed that piece, if you ask. I mean, we also did some surveys in the international nonprofit sector, and we realized that one thing that people liked about the lockdown was that family time, and it was nothing else. So I think probably that triggered the honeymoon period. And so organization kind of need to be flexible. They need to encourage rest, which is very, very important. And coming to the health of employees, the rest time, the break time is very, very important. As Malika raised a very important concern, that there is no time, there is an overlap of personal and working hours. So you have to really draw a line for that. So I think those breaks are really, really important. People have to go back to their original sense of working. So that's where these are some of the strategies. And of course, yes, as organization, they also need to continue to work on the employee morale. And I keep saying that in my organization, and I don't mind saying it here. Uh, Earlier, it was only me who was working for the organization. Now I believe my entire family works for the organization, because they give me this time out of the whole thing to be able to do this work. So, my kids know all my colleagues, which they never knew earlier. So they practically know. So my son, who's only 3 years, actually knows Mama is really doing a webinar. So he just knows webinar and webinar newspaper ke saath hai. So he of course doesn't understand the times, but I mean, I would say it's the families that are working now for the organization. So that's my take from an employer's perspective.
That's so beautifully said. Your employee is going to love you for this. Maybe that will be the tagline for the year.
Same here. We have late nights as journalists. I used to come back at past 11 o'clock and all that. And now I think my wife will understand. Yeah, I'm actually working till that time.
It works other way round also. It works other way round also. It works other way around also. Yeah, I mean, my daughter actually, I mean, she's a little older. She's 13, and she actually says, "Oh, this is what you do. You keep talking over the phone and the laptop." So I used to think you do something else. So it works other way around as well.
No, very true. A lot of questions that have come in. I just want to put some of those to you. One is around Neha Sinha is asking this: how to create and maintain a COVID-safe workplace and workforce? Who wants to take that, Purnima?
Yeah, I don't mind. What we have right now done, I mean, just from a workforce planning, I will talk. It's important to realize that in 9 months, what were those job profiles that were really affected in terms of really doing what they were supposed to do? And if there are jobs that didn't get affected, we initially perceived that these jobs will not be able to be served from home. They have to be in office. They have to be placed in office. So we actually segregated those jobs so as they can continue to work from home, because employee safety and is really important for employer at this point in time. If we have sustained this 9 months, I guess we could really sustain it for another 6 more months. So we've really pulled out some of the jobs that were not really required to be in office, and now we are only looking at the jobs that really part-time or anything that they could really come for a little while to be able to do that. So the planning has to be in such a way wherein you are really taking all the safety measures, you are following all the protocols of 6 feet distance, revamping the whole workplace from a perspective of that there is a cleaning. There was this global research, if you read it, that if in case your employees come for 1 day and then you shut your office for 2 days and then again on the 4th day they come, there is very, very less chance for the virus to spread. Because if the employees have come, those 2 days can be utilized in sanitizing the whole place. The virus stays on the surface for a particular time. So all those things are kept in mind, and of course employers have really found a way wherein just a transport rosters we used to make, we are now making employee rosters.
Okay.
To make sure that there is a complete work that's been done, but not necessarily. I think employers have changed their mindset that it's not important to come to office. Employees did amazing job in these 9 months, and believe me, whatever they did with heart. So no one could have forced them to do what they did. So I would say that we are really keen to make sure that employee safety is the priority at this point in time, and the workforce planning has to be done in accordance.
Okay. Mallika, let me put this question to you. This from again from Neha Sinha. How to stay feasible and flexible while working from home?
Fantastic. To begin with, have a routine, and that's very important. And while you do that,
have a timetable? Do you have a timetable, Mallika?
Oh, let's get to that. When I mention timetables, especially for the working professionals, I know how efficiently you all use your calendars. You say 9 to 10. If I let you go, you will even say 9 to 4:42, and then I have 30 seconds there, and then what I need to do next. Okay? When I mean to say create a routine, have a structure to your entire day. And know when you wake up to how the day flows, because what actually happened in the mid of pandemic is that because of the work from home and there was not much of clarity there, things were going haywire. Sometimes the work will go very late in the night and it starts very late in the during the daytime, and so on and so forth. So there were a lot of confusion. So it's good to understand your routine, and also set those expectations with your team and your employer. Having said that, the most important hour of the day is the first hour of your when you wake up. So if you can structure then make it more mindful, then it fuels you for the entire rest of the day. So if you can consider that as your holy hour and do all the wellness related aspects in that, which could be your physical activity, it could be your meditation, it could be things to do for the rest of the day, that actually set you going. That not only about the work from home scenario, otherwise also this holy hour will actually see you through the day.
Okay. Marcus, is your day also very structured? Do you plan? How much do you plan?
Yeah, when I was in the Air Force, one of the first weeks, I remember one of the officers told me that failing to plan is planning to fail. And it just showed that just how important it is. It's not the act that's important; it's actually the plans you create which are most important. So yes, my life is ultra planned. I exactly resonate with what Malika is saying. I have a very strict routine, which involves a self-care agenda for the first 90 to 120 minutes of the morning, where I get all my exercise, proper breakfast, responding to very urgent matters that have come to me overnight, and then sort of disconnect, do my running, spend time with the kids, etc. Then I get into my work schedule. Everything is blocked out. I have blocks in my calendar which are do not disturb. So every day I have a 1 hour, 12:30 to 1:30, no meetings at all. I eat lunch with my kids. I have a nap every day. And then again, usually from 5:30, sorry, my daughter's coming in now. Usually from 5:30 to 6:30, I have another break where I go for an evening walk and just catch up with folks overseas and get some extra steps in. And I have an end of day as well. So yes, I have a strict routine and a very codified schedule to get through the day as well. Yeah.
Okay, Marcus, there's a question specifically for you. This is from Dheeraj Chopra. Kindly suggest some superfood for boosting immunity.
Oh, fantastic. So there are 6 micronutrients that we should all be having. And I think the larger question here is also people often ask me, what's the role of a supplement? And because some people have hesitancies around supplements. And what my honest answer is with this is that there are many challenges that are facing the global food supply chains, from the quality of the soil to the type of crops that we're growing, to the amount of time between harvest and then reaching our plate, etc. So the overall nutrient capacity in our food has gone down. So provided we're taking healthy natural supplements, there's nothing wrong with that at all. And so there are 6 major ones that we should all be having. Vitamin B is very important, particularly for people from the subcontinent, as is vitamin D, because 80 to 90% have deficiencies of that. Zinc and magnesium, very important micronutrient elements to have in our diets. Omega-3 and omega-6, particularly for vegetarians, because that's important for neuronal formations as well. So these are the 6 things that should be part of our, and it's important for our resilience in terms of immunity, it's important for our mood, and it's important for our physical health as well. My wife shies away from this because every day I actually have a packet of 17 supplements that I take. I'm a big biohacker. And since I started running full marathons, I take a lot of different things, and I'm always experimenting with different things and measuring what the impact of this and that is. So I'm not saying that we all do that, but definitely these 6 are what micronutrients we should be getting in our day-to-day diets.
Okay.
If
That's it.
I may add, yeah,
Yeah,
if
yeah.
I may
Go on.
add, I do understand the importance of these nutrients, and because no matter how well you structure it, you may not be able to meet your nutrition requirement on a daily basis. So supplements is a very good way to go. Lucky for us, we come from the space of Ayurveda and naturopathy. So it's always go back to our good old kitchen spice dabbas. So turmeric especially is fantastic for you in this scenario. And ginger tea is very good for your health. It
Okay.
boosts your immune system as well. So turmeric, ginger, and cloves are very good, and so is garlic. So if you can actually take care of these and have them more, that will help you as well. And don't overcook, overkill. I've been a chef, and I tell you, we Indians double murder vegetables, rice, and everything. So please try to eat as green as possible, as raw as possible.
Okay. Okay. There must a lot of questions coming in, so let me quickly. This is from Twisha Hathi. Which are some of the most crucial topics, training programs to be conducted for employees by the Learning and Development Department? Purnima, that's for you.
You'll have to repeat the question for me, Sujit.
Which are some of the most crucial topics, stroke training programs to be conducted for employees by L&D?
Some of the topics, are these on the wellness?
I guess so. I
Yeah,
presume it is.
Yeah. So I think one of the topic that Mallika is expert on is mindfulness. Is something that organizations are really preferring, especially during this time in the L&D. So and I'll only talk about the behavioral skills here, skill development from a learning and development perspective. Mindfulness is one of the main topic. The second topic is the emotional intelligence, the self-awareness, wherein one needs to be self-aware in terms of what is an employee I need, whether it is the emotional support, whether it is a coach that I need, whether it is, a wellness program that I need. So I would just define three important aspects from a wellness perspective is the mindfulness, emotional intelligence, and the self-awareness.
Okay. This is an interesting question. Priyanka Sharma is asking this. How can leaders help their colleagues to improve mental health at home and work? Should they have more meetings, be in constant touch, and all of that? Who wants to take that?
I can take that. Yes, I can take that. So the leaders can really, if they can give space to their employees, and that's a very tricky one given the work from home setup. The context has changed now. When we used to say give space, people would pick up bags and take a break. But give that space to their employees so as they can have intellectual stimulation. And that's really important because in a physical office, it was much easier to have that intellectual stimulation. While you are back at home and individually working, it's difficult to have that individual intellectual stimulation. Hence, give them that space, give them that free time to be able to really grow themselves.
I would like to add. I would recommend the leaders to take care of their mental wellness first.
Yes.
And take that space for themselves as well, because technical aspect is a different thing, but people management, especially virtually, becomes even more challenging. And I understand they have deadlines to meet because no matter what, they still have to perform and help their teams perform. So I think it becomes imperative for them to take care of their mental and emotional wellness first. And once they're in a better place, once they're in a place of calm, they can perform better. They can ask things better in a better way.
What about being in touch with them? Smaller groups and all that, smaller teams. How important is it for them to be in touch with each other?
Extremely important, Sujit. So initially I was very hesitant telling my team to switch on camera. But because, I wasn't sure how my team is going to perceive that. And I also remember, despite of repeated reminders, team would not still switch on their cameras. And we had to really break that ice by letting them know it's okay. Wherever you are sitting, in whatever setup you are sitting, because that connect is very important. And till the time as leaders of the organization, if you are not able to reach out to your people, of course, it may not be for larger corporates, for larger organizations, it's not possible for them to reach out to each and every employee, but we always do these smaller group meetings. And it's not only as leaders to only reach out to your immediate team, but to the team at large. So that's very important, to conduct these open houses, continue to do the same thing, continue to reach out to people, continue. I mean, it's very difficult to have an open door policy in a virtual setup. That's a trick. And that's what you need to give message and communicate, that how your doors are open. And that will only be communicated if you have these group meetings, smaller group meetings, wherein people can really open up, because not everyone can open up in a public forum.
Absolutely. Marcus, since we are almost towards the end, there's some clicking going on here. Sorry. Marcus, the other day we were discussing this one thing of, you were talking about atomic habits. That was very interesting. I mean, what are some of these atomic habits that people should inculcate?
Yeah, it really comes down to the science of behavior change. So quite often, when I'm conducting sessions for folks and they talk about what their goals and their intentions are, and they tell me, Marcus, my goal, I want to run a marathon. So this is my resolution. And I have to explain to them that, running a marathon is a goal. The behavior associated with running a marathon is to become a runner. The habit associated with that behavior is to run every day or every other day. And the actions associated with that habit are things like buying a pair of running shoes, or owning a watch that will allow you to track your speed or something, or scheduling a run on a particular day. So this chain is quite often misunderstood, and people confuse the action with the goal, and that's what leads to a lot of people dropping off, or not completing, and feeling like disheartened through the process. So what I do with the sessions that I do, particularly, it's called neuroplasticity and mindsets. When I run this, is that I understand with them, okay, if this is your goal, how are we going to break it down? And I call them habit hacks, right? People understand hacking a computer, hacking a device. So I'm a hacker, I'm just a biohacker. I constantly am trying to hack this biological machine that we have, body and mind. So how can I form a whole series of little habit hacks which allow you to then achieve that particular objective, whether it's a personal objective or a professional objective? And there are three fundamental principles to habit hacks. Number one, you start small, but you have to start today. A lot of people say, okay, I'm going to start this. Amazing, doc. I'm going to start this tomorrow. I say, no, 67% of you will not even reach the start line if you do this tomorrow. You have to start it today. And that's a big difference between the expectation versus reality there. So you break it down into tiny actions, you start today. That's rule number one. Doesn't matter how small, but it has to happen today itself. Rule number two is, it's like a tower of cups. Each individual cup will fly over in the wind. You stack them up, suddenly they become a really powerful force, and you can put a weight on the top. So every habit that you form is best formed when you link it to an old habit, right? So that's the power of stacking. It's called habit stacking as a technique. And the last one is celebrate the wins. You see, our brains, they crave dopamine, the neurotransmitter. And the role of dopamine is it reinforces the neural circuitry, the neural pathway that you just went down. Now, we have a lot of bad habits in our life, and those are things which actually create a lot of dopamine. And that's why they're so enjoyable. But when we do something good, we need to force the dopamine into the system. So every time you do something good, celebrate it. It might be with an accountability partner. It might be by putting a post out on social media and getting the likes and the hearts, etc. It might be treating yourself, or it might just be feeling happy with yourself in the process. So start small, start today, stack them like you would cups, and celebrate the wins. These are my sort of biohacking techniques that I've unearthed over the last couple of decades.
Okay, great. Then we are in the final 5 minutes. For all of you, I mean, if you had some 2 or 3 messages that you want to leave for the audience, what would those be? Marcus, you want to start? 2 or 3 messages that you think. Any of you can start.
Self-care and self-love is not selfish. I think that's a wonderful mantra, and I think it's really important, and it's been highlighted over the period of time that we've all gone through. So that's my one message. It's tweetable as well if people want to tweet it as well, and that's how it would have.
Self-care and
self-love is
self-love is not selfish. Okay, great, absolutely. Mallika?
I would say the first one is awareness, becoming aware of where you are, who you are, and the times, bringing your awareness to the moment and living in the moment. So mindfulness certainly is. The second is simplify. Simplify your life. Life is not so complicated. Like Dr. Marcus has right now mentioned, how to break down the big goals and make them daily actionables that will help you achieve the goal. So simplifying everything is actually, it's just not about your career, even your relationships, emotions, and everything can be simplified too. And the last one is mindset. Your perspective is the most important. If you look at COVID, this virus is not out there to think that I'm going to wipe out humanity. It is not here to kill me. It is trying to survive, right? The moment you understand that perspective, that people are not trying to attack me, they're doing what they could possibly do to survive, there's a lot of pressure off you, right? Then you don't think that life is going after you. Actually, I was surprised when my 16-year-old daughter, when we were talking about something, and she told my son that life is tough, dude. It's not fair. So I was surprised. It's not cool to even think about those things, even if it is, it is unfortunately, unconsciously, it has become the mantra, and people start believing it. Life is not fair. Life is hard. Life isn't, and people are not after your life. So just simplify and live in the moment, and you will eventually strike the balance.
Beautiful. Purnima?
Yeah, so, I initially thought I'll stick to the mantra just announced by Dr. Marcus. I just love that, by the way, quote, and I'm going to use that often. But on the same lines, I thought that, the message that I want to give to the audience is that one must make a point to practice self-care. That's very, very important. And try to take that appointment with yourself today. As you need to do that today, 67% of people will not do that tomorrow. So we just heard Dr. Marcus say that. So I would just say, take that appointment today. We are still left with a couple of more hours for the day. So do that today.
Great. Self-care, self-love, mindfulness. Great. Thank you so much to all of you, Marcus, Mallika, Purnima. Had a great discussion. I'm sure those who are listening would have benefited. I did. A lot of learnings for me. I must change some of the things that I do. Thanks so much from Times Ascent and from the Times of India. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us. Bye-bye.
Yeah.